Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates, with your host, Cindy Gellermini.
It had reached a point where he wasn't safe, we weren't safe, and we made the most difficult decision I've ever had to make, which was for him to go to a residential placement for kids with severe autism, so that he would get that 24/7 support that he needed. So we made that choice, and I knew, the
This
facility.
is in New Jersey, this place?
No, it's actually out of state. It's outside of Boston.
Oh, right.
And I spent so many years fighting for him to get what he needed in New Jersey here at home, and it just wasn't working anymore. It just wasn't enough for him. And so we knew that he would be leaving, and the facilitated communication happens to be a controversial method. It's been discredited.
So he's not using the RPM, the rapid prompting method. He's using the facilitated.
No, and RPM is considered facilitated communication too. Ethan can use either method.
Right. Yeah. Well, they're both controversial because people think that you're typing for them.
Correct. Correct. Even though we tested it with him because we were suspicious too. No one wants to be deceived,
Sure.
And that's not to say there aren't terrible examples of where that did happen.
Right. Do you have any examples of something that you asked him that maybe the teacher wouldn't have known the answer to?
That's exactly what we did. We would ask him, like, what color is your room? And the teacher would have no idea. And Ethan would type, the walls are blue, the ceiling is white. He wouldn't know that.
Right.
And other questions that only he would know the answer to. So we knew it was legitimate for him.
Right.
We knew in this case, with this teacher, in our situation, it was legitimate for us. I can never speak to what someone else's experience with a different person would be.
Right.
But even with that, because as he still had the autism, it's not laryngitis where I just can't speak,
right.
And he still had these behaviors, and we had to make this horribly difficult decision to keep him safe and to keep us safe.
Right.
I had another child also whose life was very impacted by having a brother who was violent. So we made that choice. And here's where I wrote a book about this experience. I had a conversation with Ethan through the typing about a month before I knew he would be leaving. And I would be losing the typing because the new school does not offer that. And he won't type with me, as you heard. So I knew I would be losing the typing as a way to communicate with him. So I started to go in for extra sessions just to get in more conversations with him. And so the conversation, and it's a brief one, this took place about a month before Ethan was leaving. And I went in that day, and the teachers, these conversations take place in the teacher's office, which was a tiny little room with the desk and the phone. And it was just an ordinary day. I just wasn't expecting this conversation to happen. I went in and I said, Ethan, I know you enjoy going to the special needs service, the synagogue every month, but I realized I never asked you, what are your thoughts about God? And this was that conversation with Ethan, with him typing and me verbally asking my questions. I said, Ethan, what are your thoughts about God? And Ethan said, he typed, God is in my heart and he will always protect me. I was not expecting that. Well, did he tell you that? And Ethan typed, when I lived in heaven, he told me that. Do you remember that time? When I lived with God, I wasn't named Ethan yet. What was your name? I was not to remember it. I had many before. Do you remember anything from that time? And at that point, Ethan said verbally, no, thank you. He typed, we should talk about it when nobody is here. I said, Ethan, who should leave? Should Lisa, the teacher, leave? And he verbally said no. So Lisa said to him, should mom leave? And he verbally said, no. There was one more person in the room. Kyle was Ethan's aide. Because of the severe behaviors, we needed a strong young man with us all the time to keep everyone safe. And Kyle was a sweetheart, but he was skeptical about the typing, and Ethan felt that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I said, should Kyle leave, he verbally said a word that's very difficult. He said, yes.
Hmm.
So Kyle left the room and Ethan continued to type. I remember life with no body. When you go to heaven, there are no bodies, just spectacular energy. Did you choose to come here as Ethan Rome? Yes, I picked to be me and have many challenges. Did you pick us as your family? We were family before. We didn't live here. We lived in a small group, but got hurt by warriors. Why did you choose to come back with challenges? I will be greatly rewarded in eternity. Is there anything we should do to help you? I have to complete my journey as prescribed by God. Does it feel longer than you thought it would be? Yes, the journey is unfathomably longer than expected.
Wow, that's a big word.
He was 11. Yep. And then I had to ask him again, because I'm his mom. What should we do to help you on the journey? You just have to love me, and that is your job. The rest is my job to do.
Wow. Wow.
And that's why I wrote this book.
You just have to love me.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the message that I got. Just love him. That's all I had to do, is just love him the way he is. I'm like, that's it. That's all I have to do. I'm like, I'm his mom. I can do that.
Exactly. Cindy, you just said it. When I remember what was going through my mind, I remember how I was so present in that conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think when he said that, mm-hmm. I felt myself take a deep breath.
Yeah.
I think it was my first deep breath. Mm-hmm. 7 years.
Sure, because you're going crazy trying to find the right schools, the right therapies, the right doctors, the right medications, all this kind of stuff. You drive yourself crazy, and always thinking you're not doing enough. It's not good enough. You're not
exactly. And when he said, "You just have to love me," I remember my thought. It was not a profound thought. The thought was, "I can do that. Mm-hmm. I can do that." Mm-hmm. Like I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't fix it. I couldn't change it.
Right.
Love him. Like, I can do that.
Yeah.
That part.
Yeah. Easy.
That's easy.
Yeah.
I can do that. Mm-hmm. And it was this wave of relief. It was, oh, it's not my job to fix it. Mm-hmm. He didn't say your job is to fix it or tell me, cure me, fix me, make me different, make me perfect, make me without autism, love me perfectly, love only me. He didn't say any of that.
Right.
He said, love me. Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
Yeah.
What a relief.
Yeah.
And you know, I then was like, okay, love. What does it mean to love? Mm-hmm. And every culture in the world will tell you, you know, it's not just the warm and fuzzy feeling. In fact, loving is to act even when you don't feel warm and fuzzy, right?
Right.
It's, I'm there for you.
Right.
No matter what, mm-hmm. Hardest time, I'm there for you.
Yeah. And it's not always that easy when someone's beating you up all the time. You know, it's especially if there's a back history of any type of physical abuse or anything, that's going to be a trigger. You know, if you have a kid that's coming at you, you know, you really got to check your heart, you know. So I used to think of it as something else that would come on him temporarily and make him act that way, and then it would go away. Like I separated it from my son. That's what worked for me, to kind of separate the two things so that I could always just keep, you know, love him and not get resentful or defensive or angry or whatever.
Well, that's what makes a good mom or anyone. in relationship with anyone else to distinguish between the person and the behavior. You're not a bad person, you did a bad thing. You're a good person who did a bad thing that we want to focus on how do we help you not do it.
Right.
But he's a good person. So that is a huge distinction that's really critical, that was natural to you and actually honors the relationship. Because you're, you know, as mom, so many people, especially when there's autism, we conflate loving with, you know, fixing. And to separate them out and say, no, loving is one thing, wanting, having the intention to do what's in his best interest is one thing. Having to change is a separate behavior that we think is the same thing. And we truly love when it's unconditional.
Right.
I love you even with
That's
the autism.
it. It's the unconditional love, that right there. Yeah. And I think because you mentioned, you know, going to temple and stuff, and there's different cultures that moms are very what's the word I'm looking for? They're looking for perfection in their kids. Like, you know, you've got to get straight A's and you got to get into the best college and you have to become a doctor someday. And you know, it's like, you know, I mean, there's a lot of cultures that are like that. And there's a lot of moms that are like that with their kids. And so you got to let go of all of that, you know, looking for that perfect child that's going to do this, and this. It's like, no, it's not going to happen. And you got to just love them the way they are. You have to just love them unconditionally. Which that's the message of my children's book. Every chapter ends with, I love you just the way you are.
I know that. And I told you, Cindy, your books made me cry the whole time because, you know, every time I would read it, I'm like, yes.
Well, you knew how it was going to end. That's why.
But it's so beautiful, you know, just the heart. And it's so, to me, my tears are not just emotion, which they are, but for me, my tears are also a signal of truth. When I recognize, it's like my body knows the truth before my conscious mind does. And so I'll feel the tears and then I'll say, oh, that must be true. And so I read your books, I read your book number 3, for example. And when I read, you know, all you have to do is love me. I'm like, that is truth.
Yeah.
That's truth.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. And it's not just, you know, autism is extreme parenthood. The fact though is that message is for any parent.
Correct.
Any parent. We just had the crash course in unconditional love.
Yeah. Well, because I kind of hit on that, and this could be for any dad, where there's a scene where, I think it's in the book I gave you, where the springtime where they play baseball, right? Where the girls play softball and the dad looks out, and the dad always played baseball and he's looking at the other little boys out there playing baseball. And he always had the dream that his son was going to be a baseball player. Oh, my son's going to play for the Yankees someday. You know, you start from when they're an infant, dressing them in a Yankee outfit, and, you know, and the whole thing. Like, you know, I think all dads do that. They want their little mini me, you know. But if they're not like you, then sometimes dads, they can't relate. They become emotionally distant, you know, whatever. So I hit that. I hit a lot of heavy subjects in the in a children's book, and then I hit on the moms that you can't control everything and you got to just learn how to let it go.
Well, you know, an important lesson there, you know, when we do that and we try to control the outcome and make the person a mini me and live their life, we're putting the burden of our happiness onto the child.
Right.
Which is a terrible burden.
Yes.
To put on anyone else.
Right.
It's not Ethan's job.
Because I've seen this out there in the world, not autism aside, you know.
Anything.
You know, you see the parents pushing their kids and, you know, to do what they didn't do and, you know, whatever.
Exactly. And, you know, I think we special needs parents can teach the other parents to just, you know, wait a second.
Yeah.
What is your priority? Be aware, you know, you may be damaging your relationship with your child, because as soon as your intention is to change someone else, you're barking up the wrong tree. It's never our job, ever, autism or not, to change someone else. We can only change ourselves.
Right.
And choose how we respond to a situation. And each person is the hero of their own journey, right? We can only be the guide as mom. We can be a guide, but I can't live Ethan's life for him.
Right.
Eric's life for him. I might say, I can do it better. It's not for me to say.
Right.
I can live my life better. And
Right.
that, I think, is our message to all parents who are struggling
Right.
with their relationship with their kids.
Yeah, I used to see my son David, my typical child. He's complete opposite of Robbie. He's 6'4", 275 pounds. He's like this big, huge, athletic, like linebacker, right? Never got sick. Never. I would take him to the pediatrician. They're like, I don't even know this kid, you know. Where Robbie was there for every single little everything, you know. But he was in a travel baseball league, and I watched how competitive the dads were, but flying in $375 bats from France and, you know, whatever, and they had, you know, like craziness, having these kids working out way before they're supposed to, and they end up having to get Tommy John surgery because they're pitching too much at too young, and, you know, because they're pushing these kids too hard. And I always, you know, the kids are not going to play in the major leagues, but that's what the parents have in their head, you know. And I always wanted to take Robbie and stand them up in front of them and say, just thank God you have a healthy child. Just thank God that you have a healthy child that's not having seizures and thrown up all night and, you know, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, you just, why can't you just love your son the way he is? Why are you pushing him? Why are you doing this? It was like there was something inside of me that was like screaming for years, like, just love your child the way they are. Why can't you just do that?
I know, Cindy. And, you know, I think you're talking about gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
To be grateful that you have what you have.
Right.
To be grateful for your healthy kids,
Right.
and what all the good that comes with the kid who's different.
Mm-hmm.
And to choose, you know, that's one of our biggest strengths in this life, is what do we choose to focus on? Are we going to focus on all the crap in the world? And there's plenty of it. If that's what we say we're going to focus on, or with a kid, he can't do this and he can't do that, and oh my God, this, and this, versus, wait a minute, what about all the good? Because both are always there. You know, there's that famous optical illusion. It, depending on how you look at it or how the light hits it, it can either be a skull or two women drinking tea.
Mm-hmm.
And both images are there. It's not, you're not right if you, or wrong if you see one or the
Mm-hmm.
other. They're both there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what you see. And you get to choose, all right, am I going to focus on the skull, or am I going to focus on the women drinking tea? And that's up to each of us. It doesn't mean the other thing isn't there.
Right.
But it's when we choose from a place of hope and let's focus on what's good, that we just have a happier life. You know, I'll give you a quick story with Ethan. I had gone to visit him on his birthday. I flew, it was his 14th birthday, and I flew there to be with him. I was going to fly in and out. And the case manager there, you know, set up this, you know, wonderful day of activity. His wife is a kindergarten teacher. She made all the, you know, preparation, and we're going to trace leaves. Like, okay, fine. His birthday is October. So I'm thinking, Ethan's not going to want to trace leaves. He's going to want to break sticks. I know that's what he likes. So we go outside. Sure enough, he's having none of the looking for leaves. I said, don't worry, buddy. We're going to get you some sticks. So get a bunch of broken stick, you know, dry sticks. Go back in. We're in the gym. I'm on a pad, you know, a gym pad mat, not a pad, a mat. On one side of the gym. Ethan's across this big room on the other side. I'm tracing leaves. I'm having with crayons. I'm having a ball. Ethan's across the room breaking the sticks. He finishes breaking the sticks. And what does he do when he's done? He takes off his shoes and socks, and he starts smelling his feet.
Okay.
And I feel myself getting triggered by this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, he's 14 years old. I'm here for his birthday. Really? Is that what he's really doing? How weird. And what if someone saw him do it? And, you know, 2-year-olds smell their feet and, you know, all that. And I'm like, I feel myself clenching around it. And I'm happy to tell you, though, I caught myself. Heidi, you're here with him. You're here for his birthday. Whatever. Everyone thinks their feet smell interesting. You know, most of us do it in the bathroom if we want to smell our feet. But, you know, okay, he's just going to do it. He's going to act on what he wants to do. Is it really a big deal? I'm so lucky to be here with him on his birthday, and look at those cheeks. He really has those cheeks you want to squeeze.
Mhm.
And Ethan has a laugh, the most delightful, joyful laugh that people will turn. What is that? Like when they hear this, I said, I'm here with this delicious boy.
Mhm.
I'm just going to focus on how much I love him. And so this was, a few moments go by, and he finishes smelling his feet, and I'm across the room. I'm like, he's done. A few minutes have gone by. He gets up, he crosses the gym to where I'm sitting. He sits next to me on the mat, and he put his head in my lap.
Aw.
Cindy, if time could have stood still
Mhm.
in that moment,
Mhm.
it would have been good. And I thought to myself, he felt me shift my focus.
Right. Because if you had gone over there and been like, Ethan, stop smelling your feet, whatever, you would have missed that whole moment.
I would have missed it. And I don't think he would have come over to me.
No. Uh-uh.
He would have
'Cause you
felt
would
the
have been upset.
anger, the judgment, or what.
Yeah.
And what's really fascinating, because these kids are so sensitive on a sensory level.
Yep.
I wonder if, given that he was smelling his feet, I bet my scent changed.
Mm.
I think, anger and, fear, anger is, you're going to smell different. Like they
Right.
say, animals can smell fear.
Right.
Our kids are so sensitive. I think when I shifted
Yeah.
into love,
There's something very empathetic about them where they pick up on your emotions and your feelings and just, what you're giving off. I always said Robbie had a sixth sense, and he just always could pick up on people for sure. And this is sort of a perfect
well, and part of it too, I it's in the book, I talk about the spiritual umbilical cord,
mm,
mother and child, and that is not severed.
Hmm.
That we have a special connection with that child. With all our children, but I think especially our special kids, that's really there, and that's part of why we feel each other's feelings.
Right.
And even if you didn't give birth to this kid, I think
Mhm.
especially if you did, but even if you didn't, it's a heart to heart connection, because the
Right.
heart is so powerful
Right.
and is that connection. And I think what you're
It's a soul
describing,
connection, actually. Yeah.
it's what?
A soul. It's a
A
soul
soul connection.
connection.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and as Ethan indicated, on a soul level, he chose to come here and do whatever work, whether for his own soul or for the sake of the other souls traveling with him
Mhm.
through eternity, for the different things we need to learn.
Right. Yeah. And when he said that he chose to come here and be in this body, knowing that, he was going to have a really hard time here. And it was, what did he say? Unfathomably? What was the word that he used?
Yeah, the journey is unfathomably longer
Long. Yeah, than he thought. Yeah. The reason I sent you the third book is because the experience that I had with Robbie when he had his first seizure at 17, he actually passed away for 15. He was gone for 15 minutes, and they resuscitated him and brought him back. And then he was here for 10 more years until he had his final seizure, and he didn't come back from. And I had a friend that she's a very prophetic person. She was the first person that texted me, and she said, Cindy, I was praying for you this morning, and I felt that the Lord told me that Robbie was supposed to go home a long time ago. He stayed here longer than he was supposed to, but he stayed here out of his love for you, his mother. That just, like, it was an unbelievable thing for somebody to say to me. She had no idea what she was saying. It didn't hit me until later. What she really was saying is that 10 years earlier, he probably was supposed to go and not come back, but he chose to come back because of his love for his mom. And that's the story of the last chapter of my book. And I don't want to give it away, for anybody, if you want to read it, buy the book. But now you understand that whole chapter. It really happened. So, and so it made me think, oh my goodness, what was going on that last 15 minutes? And for him to choose to come back here, and the last 10 years were the worst. It was just the vomiting, the diarrhea, the seizures, the trips to the hospital, in the ambulance. It was just not It was just awful. And for him to wake up from a seizure in the hospital and to start crying, and it was heartbreaking, you know, and to think that he chose to come back to that.
You know, Cindy, that tells me, and I know you've had other guests who can speak more to this. He was a master soul.
Mm.
To choose to come to that suffering on this earth plane out of his love for you, that is a high level, and it tells me a lot about your soul.
Mm.
That yours is at that level to do hard work, hard spiritual work,
Mm.
to learn whatever needed to be learned. You know, when the souls were gathering and saying, we need to do this, and say, we're going to do this. It's going to be tough, but we're going to do it together.
Yeah.
And that's what it tells me about your soul and Robbie's soul.
Yeah. And I'm still connected to him because, I mean, even since he's been in heaven for 3 years, the stuff that has happened has been crazy. And just like when he first went, just the penguins that kept appearing everywhere.
I know.
It's just crazy.
I love that. Ethan loves penguins too, by the way.
Isn't that funny? A lot of kids love penguins, but just, yeah. And that's why I wrote the story about a little penguin with autism, because all these penguins kept appearing. I was like, what the heck is with all the penguins? So I explained it in the book. Even just crazy stuff, just like me being on the Today Show and on all these things that have happened. If I just feel like all these doors have opened, it's like he's up there praying for me, and he's like, I feel like he's maneuvering everything like a chess game. He's like, okay, now this is going to happen, now that's going to happen. But the motivation behind all of it is I want to help other families that have autistic kids, just like you do, you know. So tell me about your, is it a foundation? It's a group. What is it that you have, your organization that you have?
Well, it's a business dedicated to helping overwhelmed moms. And I've been shifting more into speaking and educating people around this because, you know, this message of you just have to love me is really one that is, as we said, not only for the autism community, although we benefit, I think, a lot from it, but for all parents who are struggling. And the realization that the biggest challenges that we face when people, you know, we live in a time, you know, now coming out of COVID, but people have been struggling. And what do I do? What do I do? How do I handle this situation? And my feeling is that Ethan's guidance of you just have to love me. If we realize that every decision any of us ever makes, ever, can be boiled down to one choice between love and fear. Any decision, the decision to hold up a pen, drink water, anything, is choosing love or fear. And if we say, okay, in this moment, if love is the North Star, where is the love right now? What do I do right now? What is the loving thing to do? How do I love more right now? How do I love myself more? How do I love this other person more? How do I accept and love the situation right now? And in the next moment, not the next 20 years necessarily, in the next moment, what is the more loving choice? And do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you'll do the next loving thing. But when in doubt, stop, breathe, take a breath and breathe, get grounded again and say, okay, where is the love right now? If everyone were to do that, it would be a different world. Instead of out of survival and fear and anger and, oh, right now, what do I do? Oh, you're the enemy. Oh, well, what if it were a world of I accept everyone for who and what they are? I accept the situation for who and what it is,
Mm-hmm.
without resisting and fighting and you're other. What if it's all, no, we're all in this together. We're all connected in love.
Mm-hmm.
The world would be a different place. And so to answer your question, my organization is about spreading that word, whether it's speaking, writing the book, running groups, individual coaching as needed, creating community so that especially people with severely autistic kids who feel so isolated and alone know that they're not alone.
What is the name of the organization?
Mom's Spectrum Oasis.
Okay. And didn't Ethan help you with that name?
Yes, he did. Thank you for remembering. Yes, I had gone in to work with him one day on communication, and I had a business networking meeting because the idea was percolating, and I was all dressed up, and I go into work with him, and the first thing, he reaches over to type, and we were laughing because he was never in a hurry to get to work. But, oh, Ethan, you have something to say? So he types, "You look different." So we laugh, and I thought I knew what he meant, but I said, "What?" So Lisa, the teacher, said, "Ethan, what do you mean different?" And he types, "Nice." So I laughed. I said, "I know, but I do look different." I said, I have an idea to start a group for women who also have kids with autism like you. And I've never done this before. I've never started a business before, and I don't quite know what to do. So I'm joining a group of women who are going to help me get started. He types, "I want to help you name it." Now, Cindy, I had not told him. Obviously, it was the first time I was telling him this. I mean,
Right.
this was all in my mind. I wasn't discussing any of this with Ethan.
Right.
And so I hadn't said that I was stuck on the name. I was like, what do I name it? The name is important. It needs to sum it up. And what do I name it? And I didn't tell him that was an issue for me. And here he comes out of the blue. "I want to help you name it." So really great. Any suggestions? And he types, "Mindful Oasis." Ethan, thank you. You named it. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is wonderful. Then you do the due diligence with names, and it already existed. I think it was a yoga studio.
Right.
But so Mindful Oasis, but Oasis
Right.
was the perfect word. And so I
Right.
kept that part.
Right. Right. Awesome. So how can people reach you if they want to know more about your Mom's Spectrum Oasis, and tell us how they can get your book?
All of that, they can come to HeidiRome.com or momspectrumoasis.com. It will all come to me, HeidiRome.com, including the book, which is also on Amazon, but you can also get it
Can
through.
you hold up the cover so we can see the whole cover of the
Sure.
book, please? Sure. There it is. Okay, awesome. And they can get that on Amazon too, or
Yes.
you prefer them to go to your website?
Whatever works for them. If they're on the website, I then know who got the book. Otherwise, if it's easier to do it on Amazon, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Okay. We're over our time, as I always do, but that's fine. All right. Thank you, Heidi, for joining us today. I really enjoyed having you.
Thank you, Cindy, so much for having me. A pleasure to be here.
Okay. Bye-bye. That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening and it helped you gain a new perspective. To see the video version of the show, go to our YouTube channel, Robbie and Me, Autism Reality. If you're interested in buying our book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, the link will be in our episode description, as well as my Instagram and Facebook pages. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like more content, please be sure to hit that like button, follow us, and don't forget to leave us a great review. Thank you for joining us. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.